If you cannot produce enough of interceptors to help Ukraine win the war against the country that wants to destroy the world order, then how are you going to win in the war against perhaps an enemy who is stronger than Russia? Think 2 steps ahead. People come up with some most incredible arguments to explain why Ukraine does not deserve to be supported. But the very simple fact is, if you lose in Ukraine, it will have a domino effect, and you will start losing everywhere.
This is my video update on this Friday, May the 3rd. Everyone that is celebrating Good Friday, Orthodox Christians and other believers who are celebrating Good Friday today, may I wish you a very good Friday. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with, my nose is itching. I feel like Zelensky. Let's start things off with Kuleba, Kuleba. He was giving an interview to Foreign Policy magazine, Foreign Policy publication, whatever it's called, the neocon magazine that goes by FP. And they were interviewing the foreign minister of Ukraine. And Kuleba, he's an interesting character, isn't he? Not very bright, but boy, does he have a big mouth. He is a liability. He's a liability. That's what he is. He is a freaking liability because he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but boy, does he have a big, big mouth. Kind of reminds me of Stoltenberg, but he was asked how Kiev plans to use the $61 billion in American money. And Kuleba started to talk about how the money was delayed and it has done a lot of damage to Ukraine and to the Ukraine military, and they're still waiting on a whole lot of weapons. And then he started to talk about how Russia is outproducing the collective West. And this should be embarrassing for the collective West. And then Kuleba talked about how the collective West could possibly believe it could go up against, what's up, buddy? Hey. You want to join me for this video? Yeah? All right. Let's talk about some news. Yeah, I know. Kuleba. He's got a big mouth, huh? Yeah. So, Kuleba, he started to talk about how is the United States going to face off against China if it can't even deal with Russia? That is what Kuleba said. Oh, man. Let's see here. Security and prosperity of America stems from the current world order. If that world order ceases to exist, the security and prosperity of American taxpayers will be immediately under attack. And if you cannot satisfy the military needs, if you cannot produce enough interceptors to help Ukraine win the war against the country that wants to destroy the world order, then how are you going to win the war against perhaps an enemy who is stronger than Russia? Think 2 steps ahead. in reference to China. How are you going to face off against China if you can't even defeat Russia? You see what Kuleba is trying to do here? He's trying to humiliate the United States, humiliate them into giving over more weapons and more money. That is exactly what he is trying to do. He said that Russia has become more efficient in producing weapons than the whole Western alliance. It's a bad sign. Things must change if we are serious about defending the world as we know it, Kuleba said in the interview. Ask yourselves, what are we doing wrong if we cannot help our ally prevail? Oh, Kuleba, Kalua Kuleba, you fool. He's a fool, huh, Kuleba? Yeah, he is a fool. He's a fool because he still hasn't realized that Ukraine is not an American ally, bro. Bro, Ukraine is not an ally. It's a proxy. It's a proxy, not an ally. Oh, boy. So yesterday, The Economist, they decided to vomit up a whole bunch of articles about Macron. Yeah, they threw out a whole lot of articles about Emmanuel Macron. Little Napoleon. The Economist, they had an article with the title, Europe in Mortal Danger, an interview with Emmanuel Macron. Then they had a post with the title, Emmanuel Macron's urgent message for Europe. The French president issues a dark and prophetic warning. Macron, the prophet, huh? The dark prophet. Little Napoleon. Another article, Emmanuel Macron on how to rescue Europe. The French president on grave risks to the continent and what to do about them. Yeah, 3 articles from one publication about Macron. Yep. And look, the basic message from this article, from these articles on Macron, which included an interview of Jupiter himself, is that if Russia breaks through Ukraine defenses, and if Ukraine then asks the collective West for help, asks Emmanuel Macron for help, then France will consider ground troops in Ukraine. It will consider ground troops in Ukraine. We'll consider it, if Russia breaks through and if Zelensky gives me a call and he says, Emmanuel, you got to help me out, I'll consider it, Yeah, I'll consider it. It's the least I could do. This is all part of Macron's strategic ambiguity, by the way. Yeah, his brilliant strategic ambiguity. If Russia wins in Ukraine, there will be no security in Europe, Macron stated in an interview with The Economist. I'm not ruling anything out because we are facing someone who is not ruling anything out, he told The Economist, referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin. I like that. I'm not ruling anything out because we are facing someone who is not ruling anything out. Macron claimed that the supposed deterrence produced by the hypothetical deployment of French troops is necessary to prevent a Russian victory and fend off future attacks on other nations, despite Moscow denying that it has any intention to do so. He also turned to the argument of sunk costs to explain why Kiev must be supported by Western states. Quote, what credibility will there be for Europeans who would have spent billions with the survival of the continent at stake and not have given themselves the means to stop Russia, he asked. What Macron really means in this statement is, what credibility will there be, not for European citizens? Ow! Why are you biting me? What credibility will there be for not European citizens, but what credibility will there be left for the political elite, That's what Macron really means. That is what he is really talking about. The political elite, the political class in Europe has spent hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars trying to remove Russian President Vladimir Putin and defeat Russia. And they're getting spanked. And they're going to lose their credibility, yeah. Maybe even lose their power. And that's freaking out Jupiter, little Napoleon himself, Macron. That is why you have a lot of panic going on in the collective West. For example, Foreign Affairs has this article: American aid alone won't save Ukraine. To survive, Kiev must build new brigades and force Moscow to negotiate. Yeah, the 61 billion, that wasn't enough. Forget about the 61 billion. Just forget about the whole 61 billion going to Ukraine nonsense. It's not enough. What Ukraine really needs, they need to build new brigades. That's what they really need to do. I thought the money was going to help Zelensky do that. I thought the money was all about weapons and mobilization and stuff like that. I was under the impression that 61 billion, that was just the right amount to defeat Russia. I guess not. I guess not. American aid alone won't save Ukraine. Ukraine needs to build new brigades. More money is what they're saying. That is what Foreign Affairs is saying. More money. We got to give more money to Project Ukraine. The Associated Press says no safety in retreat. Ukrainian soldiers say rear defensive lines barely exist amid Russian advance. There's that word again, retreat. They're using that word quite a lot these days. I remember a time when saying the word retreat was taboo. It was advancing westward or tactical surrender. Yeah, that's what they used in Mariupol. It was a tactical surrender. Now they're using the word retreat quite a lot. And the Associated Press is saying that Ukraine doesn't have the fortifications in place to stop the Russian advance. They spent 8 years building up fortifications in Bakhmut and Avdiivka and Soledar, and the Russians have demolished 8-9 years of NATO fortifications. And now the Ukraine military is panicking. The collective West is panicking because they haven't built up any fortifications further west, or they haven't built up fortifications like what they had in Avdiivka and Bakhmut. And if the Russians tore apart Avdiivka and Bakhmut, it won't be as difficult to push through whatever they have in the West. So the UK Telegraph, they have an article with the title, Putin's crushing new offensive could be the end of Ukraine. The West's support isn't coming quickly enough to match the supplies Russia is getting from its allies. The narrative that weapons to Ukraine stopped for 6 months while Russia was being supplied by China. We've got that narrative. Yeah, all right. Weapons never stopped flowing to Ukraine. They never stopped flowing to Ukraine. I said this 2 weeks ago. That's nonsense. And the cope about China supplying weapons to Russia, well, that's cope. That is cope. But that's how they're going to explain the defeat. That is how they are going to explain all of this. Ukraine lost because weapons stopped flowing for 6 months, and the Russians took advantage of the stoppage in weapon supplies, and at the same time China kicked in by supplying Russia with all kinds of weapons and technology, and that helped Russia gain the upper hand and get momentum and defeat Ukraine. That's how they're going to explain this. I've said this before in many, many videos. The Economist had another article the other day on Project Ukraine with the title, "Ukraine is on the brink," says a senior general. Interview with Vadim Skipitsky, deputy head of Ukraine's military intelligence. So The Economist, they are introducing us to a new cast member in Project Ukraine. And this guy's interesting. Skipitsky. That's his name. And he's a pirate. That's the best part. That's the best part about this guy. He's a pirate. Awesome. Awesome. So let's read the first paragraph from The Economist. The scruffy headquarters of HUR, Ukraine Military Intelligence Agency, stands on a jagged piece of land in central Kiev, known as Fisherman's Island. Strictly speaking, it is not an island, but a peninsula, and there isn't much fishing going on these wartime days, but sporting a piratical beard. Oh my God, I can't take it. Oh boy. Okay. Oh boy. Sporting a piratical beard, the agency's deputy head, Major General Vadim Skipitsky, plays a nautical theme, blunt, enigmatic, and sharp as a captain's hook. He exudes many of the qualities that have made HUR one of the most talked about secret services in the world. But he sounds troubled as he assesses Ukraine's battlefield prospects. Things, he says, are as difficult as they have ever been since the early days of Russia's full-scale invasion, and they are about to get worse. So we have an island in Kiev, known as Fisherman's Island, where this pirate-looking guy is the deputy head of Ukraine's military intelligence, and he even has a little bit of a pirate beard. Oh boy. He has that beard where if I shaved all of this and I just kept the line right here, that's the beard that this guy is sporting, like a pirate. We have Ursula von der Pirate, we have Pirate Schultz, and now we've got Skipitsky the pirate. Vadim Skipitsky the pirate. Oh, man. Hanging out on Fisherman's Island. And he's telling The Economist how Ukraine is in for a very difficult time. Ukraine is on the brink of defeat, according to Skipitsky the pirate. All right, let's see, what else? What else do we got? Business Insider, they have an article with the title, "The U.S. spent so much time fighting insurgents that it forgot what it means to actually fight a war," a U.S. vet in Ukraine says. An American veteran who fought in Ukraine said the U.S. kind of forgot what it means to actually fight a war. He said U.S. training has long been heavily focused on fighting insurgents in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. He said his own training wouldn't have prepared him for a war like Ukraine. Wasn't Blinken and Kirby, weren't they telling us that Russia is the second best military in Ukraine? Isn't that what they were telling us? We thought Russia was the second best military in the world, but they ended up being the second best military in Ukraine. That was the joke that Kirby and Austin and Blinken were we're putting out there, huh? And now we are getting this report from Business Insider, which is saying that an American veteran fighting in Ukraine, by the way, they're saying that this American veteran is fighting in Ukraine, that this guy fighting in Ukraine, this is like nothing he has ever seen. He has not been trained to fight this type of war. All right, so that is the article from Business Insider. Just a lot of panic yesterday. For some reason, a lot of articles came out with a whole bunch of panic because the Russians are advancing very fast. And the fear is that Ukraine's not going to make it to the November 2024 elections. That's what they're really worried about. And they gave them $61 billion. And the American people are not happy about that. So if Project Ukraine collapses before the elections, with the $61 billion given to the Zelensky regime, that's not going to look good for Professor Biden. So if you're the United States, if you're the Biden White House, what do you do to get out of this hole that you have dug for yourself? What do you do? Well, there's only one answer. Only one answer. Sanctions. That's right. Sanctions, sanctions, sanctions. From Zero Hedge, U.S. imposes sanctions on Chinese companies vital to Russia's defense industry. Yeah, you don't only continue to sanction Russia, but sanction China as well. Why not? Why not? Oh, boy. The almost 300 targets being sanctioned by both Treasury and the Department of State include sanctions on dozens of actors that have enabled Russia to acquire desperately needed technology and equipment from abroad, the Treasury Department said in a press release. So-called dual-use items out of China are a key focus of the action, which is being hailed as one of the most wide-ranging sanctions against Chinese companies so far. In Washington, sanctions aimed at Russia. 20 companies based in China and Hong Kong were named. So they're proud of it. They're proud of the fact that they're placing more sanctions on Russia, and they're proud at the fact that they're now placing a whole bunch of sanctions on China. They're boasting about it. They're gloating about it. Oh, boy. Companies in Turkey, Belgium, Azerbaijan, Slovakia, and the United Arab Emirates are also targeted. Treasury has consistently warned that companies will face significant consequences for providing material support for Russia's war, and the U.S. is imposing them today on almost 300 targets, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said. Losing the sanctions war to Russia was not enough, huh? Yellen had to pick a fight with China now. So now they're going to lose a sanctions war to China. So there is an off-ramp to all of this. What do you think the off-ramp is? Minsk 3? Minsk 3 is the off-ramp, huh? Yep, I agree. I agree, Mr. Cat. Minsk 3, here it comes. Date for Swiss proposed Ukraine peace talks revealed. Russia has described the event as pointless. A Swiss proposed peace conference on the Ukraine conflict will take place on June 15th to 16th, a statement from Bern announced on Thursday. It added that more than 160 delegations from around the world have been invited to take part, although Russian diplomats are not among them. The Swiss government revealed plans in February to host a major peace summit by the summer, but did not offer specific dates at the time. In its latest statement, Bern said Moscow had not been invited to join at this stage. And here we see a tweet from Viola Amherd, honored to invite global leaders to the first summit of peace in Ukraine, 15 to 16 of June, Bergenstock, Switzerland. Let's advance dialogue based on the UN Charter towards a path to peace. Global collaboration is key to shape a peaceful future. Summit on peace in Ukraine. That's the post from Amherd, who is the prime minister of Switzerland, I believe. So, yeah, a peace conference where Russia's not invited. They're not invited to this peace conference. Actually, it's not that they're not invited. They're not invited to actually participate in the conference. Russia has been invited to attend the presentation of the results of the conference, if that's the right way of phrasing it. So Russia's not going to be invited to take part in the actual summit, right? Sitting down and talking about Zelensky's 10-step peace proposal, because that's what this summit is based off of. Zelensky's capitulation plan, which is really the U.S.'s capitulation plan handed to Zelensky. And Russia's not going to be able to sit in and listen to whatever countries attend this summit talk about Zelensky's 10-point peace proposal. But Russia's going to be invited into the room once the summit is over, and they'll be presented the peace plan summit results. It's so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. But this is their Minsk 3 moment. Make no mistake about it. This is their Minsk 3 moment where they actually believe that Putin, Russia will accept the results of this summit, even though Russia has said a million times, this is nonsense, this is ridiculous. We're not taking part in this summit. We're not interested in this summit. This summit is fantasy, but they're still going forward with it. And we remember Zelensky's 10-point peace plan, right? Which is Russia leaves Donbass, they leave Crimea. What else? Putin goes on trial in The Hague. His government resigns. Russia pays $1 gazillion in reparations to Zelensky, so Zelensky can buy $1 gazillion homes. That's Zelensky's peace plan. And that's what they're going to talk about in Switzerland. And then they're going to call Russia into the principal's office. Russia's going to be outside of the principal's office, and they're going to call Russia into the principal's office, and they think that Russia's going to agree to the results of this peace summit, to whatever document comes out of this peace summit. I think he hears something. No? Nothing going on? All right, let's move on now and talk about David Cameron, or maybe we should call him Chicken Boy. Chicken Boy David Cameron, the real Prime Minister of UK. And the reason I call him this is because yesterday Cameron, he said that British weapons given to Ukraine absolutely have the blessing of the UK to strike Russian territory. That is what Cameron said. He said the weapons we have given Ukraine, yes, they can hit Russian territory. Absolutely. That is what Cameron said. And then Reuters reported on this statement from Cameron, and Cameron freaked out, and he must have called Reuters and told Reuters to take down the story about the UK telling Ukraine to hit Russian territory with their weapons. That's right, and Reuters had to take down the story about Cameron. Reuters' news story on Britain's Cameron in Kiev is withdrawn. A Reuters story saying Britain's Foreign Secretary David Cameron promises aid to Ukraine is withdrawn, pending review of certain details in the story. A revised version of the story will be published in due course. He chickened out. He was talking tough, talking about UK weapons hitting Russian territory, and then someone, probably someone in the military, told Cameron, bro, shut up. Shut up, bro. What are you trying to do? Drag us into a conflict with Russia where we will get annihilated? And Cameron was forced to call up Reuters and tell Reuters to retract that story. Cameron is no better when it comes to Gaza. To be quite honest, Gaza and Israel, he is no better. The Guardian ran an article with the title, David Cameron backed Israel arms sales 2 days after the death of UK aid workers. Decision appears to be based on official assessment of Israel's compliance with humanitarian law that did not cover recent events. So they did the assessment of Israel's compliance with humanitarian law before they decided to give weapons over to Israel. And the Guardian is basically saying that this assessment was done before the strike that killed British aid workers. But the fact remains that British aid workers were killed, and 2 days later, Cameron green lights more weapons to Israel. That's just a fact. So we're going to take a walk, all right? It's been nice hanging out with you. Next time I'll come by and I'll bring you some food. All right? Okay. Take care, buddy. Let's go for a walk. And let's talk about the HR 6090 Antisemitism Act, which helps no one. Doesn't. You want to come? Come for a walk? Let's go. Let's go. Come on. Come on, let's go and talk about some more news. So HR 6090, the Anti-Semitism Act, which, what was I saying, which helps no one, solves no problem, doesn't provide any solution to everything that is going on with the conflict in Gaza, in Israel. But what it does do, what the act does do is it helps the very powerful get one step closer to removing the First Amendment. That it does do, and it does it very well. So let me read you a tweet, a post on X from Cenk Uygur, and then I'll read you a post from Glenn Greenwald. Cenk Uygur says, House anti-Semitism bill is the most unconstitutional bill I've ever seen. It basically makes criticism of Israel illegal in America, and the House passed it 320 to 91. Not one mainstream media article mentions that AIPAC spent $100 million to buy off these politicians. Might be relevant in their decision making. Yeah, politicians would never be affected by that kind of money. But to be fair, if the reporters had mentioned the role of AIPAC, they might be arrested under the new law. Hey, be careful. Be careful, all right? What was I saying? They might be arrested under the new law. Also, we can criticize America any way we like, on the right or left. But if we criticize Israel, we might be arrested. In fact, if this bill passes, I might get arrested for this tweet where I am stating indisputable facts. That's from Cenk Uygur. Let me now read you a post from Glenn Greenwald. Actually, it was in reply to Cenk Uygur. Glenn Greenwald says, I think Americans would be horrified to learn what they are now legally banned by Congress from expressing. Banned. Saying someone is more loyal to Israel than the U.S. Criticizing Israel in a way Congress thinks is unfair, and comparing Israeli war crimes to NAZIs. That is from Glenn Greenwald. What else here? From the Spectator Index, breaking. Reuters reports that Russian military personnel have entered an air base in Niger that is hosting U.S. troops after the West African country asked Washington to withdraw its military personnel from the country. Come on. So from what I understand, American personnel is at the base in Niger. They're preparing to leave this base, but at the same time, Russian military has moved in. So you have U.S. military and Russian military, from what I understand, at the same base in Niger. Very interesting. So let's do a couple of clown worlds and we'll wrap this video up. So Professor Biden, he said that Japan is xenophobic. That is what Biden said. He actually called China, Russia, and Japan xenophobic. He was speaking at a campaign fundraiser in Washington that marked the start of Asian American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Biden said the U.S. economy was growing in part because we welcome immigrants. Think about it, he said. Why is China stalling so bad economically? Why is Japan having trouble? Why is Russia? Because they're xenophobic, he said. They don't want immigrants. Who's telling Biden that the Chinese and the Russian economy is doing poorly? Who's feeding him this info? They're feeding him wrong info, you know? They're telling him stuff that isn't true, and Biden, because of the state that his mind is in, he believes this stuff. He actually believes that the Chinese economy and the Russian economy is doing poorly. And he actually believes it's doing poorly because they don't want immigrants. Who is telling him this stuff? Who is telling Biden this stuff? Oh boy. And then he calls Japan the U.S.'s trusted ally. Now that's an ally, Mr. Kuleba, Foreign Minister of Ukraine. That is an ally, Japan. You're a proxy. Japan is an ally, but Biden even calls his allies names, xenophobes. Oh boy. So what else? What else? Let's do one more. This is from JD. Breaking. Putin has authorized the display of the latest Russian military tech at the exhibition on Polknaya Gora, right next to the captured NATO equipment. Found the origin of the chips, Ursula, going. So yeah, the washing machine chips. They found the washing machine chips. And I made it to the church, everybody. Here's one from Quiver Quantitative. Wow, we now estimate that Nancy Pelosi made $2.6 million in the stock market today. This is more than 14x her annual salary. This is the highest daily gain in wealth we've seen since we released our net worth dashboard. And that is why Project Ukraine is so important to them. Who else is on this list? Mitt Romney is on this list. Yeah. Sarah Jacobs. Mark R. Warner is on this list. All right. That's the video. We're going to get you some food And let's see the church real quick, since the whole video was about making our way to the church. Let's see to the church and see the church and end the video. All right. I got some more. I got some more food, cats. There's right here. Right there. There's a whole bunch of food. You love them whiskers, huh? Yeah. Them whiskers are good. All right. This is where I leave you, my friend. I gotta edit this video and get it published. Take care, buddy.